Equal representation of women in political bodies. Although the numbers are gradually improving, the interparliament less than 20% of parliamentarians worldwide. Knowing that the right to participation encompasses all areas of public and political life and not only elected office, I am concerned that the trend of lower levels of representation of women in elected office are also reflected in other areas of public and political life, especially with regard to decision-making positions. Women's right to participate is a fundamental human right in an officer. In addition, the CEDAW Committee has observed that where there is full and equal participation of women, the implementation of women's rights and compliance with the Convention improves. This is especially true in times of conflict and post-conflict when women's voices are likely to be silenced. Security Council Resolution 1325, which is the landmark resolution on women, peace and security, recognizes the paramount importance of women as equal actors in both the prevention and resolution of conflicts. Indeed, ensuring women's full participation in all areas of public life is fundamental to achieving long-term stability, development, and human rights. We cannot claim to live in democratic societies if half the population is not fully included in public and political life. Although the United Nations has often emphasized the importance of ensuring women's full participation in political processes, women's participation is still excluded in too many fora. An increase in the representation of women in decision-making positions in national, regional, and international institutions is a prerequisite for countering negative societal attitudes and achieving sustainable democracy. Empirical evidence also demonstrates that in situations where women are able to influence both short-term recovery activities following conflict and long-term peace building, women's enjoyment of their rights is enhanced, and they are more likely to stay engaged in post-conflict governance. Negative stereotypes about women's role in society are a key obstacle to women's ability to participate in public and political processes. When women present themselves as leaders or candidates, stereotypes perpetuated by the media affect their image and possibilities for being elected or otherwise endorsed for public positions. When women do succeed in obtaining key posts, they are frequently confined to feminized issues such as environment, children, and health, rather than male-dominated areas of finance, justice, and defense. Moreover, the former generally do not attract the same level of budget funding as do the latter administrations. Additionally, cultural and religious beliefs and the lack of shared responsibility for domestic chores within households, which add burdens on women's time, function as de facto restrictions on women's ability to actively participate in public life. In times of conflict, women often defy these traditional notions of their roles, taking up functions that are not usually accessible to them. These experiences can open up new opportunities to address pre-existing patterns of discrimination during the post-conflict period. However, the UN Security Council has expressed concern about the continued low numbers of women in formal institutions, and in conflict prevention and resolution. The Council has thus encouraged Member States alongside international and regional organizations to take measures to increase the number of women involved in mediation efforts and other representative roles. In addition, a variety of other international actors are working to improve women's representation in initiatives to prevent, resolve, and recover from conflict. For instance, last year, the United Nations Office for West Africa, UNOWA, initiated 2 mediation trainings for 30 senior West African women as part of its regional 1325 action plan. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today's meeting is a good opportunity to share promising practices whilst identifying remaining obstacles and challenges to women's leadership and political participation. The example of the Senegalese elections should be commended as an innovative practice to promote participation of women in politics. The Women's Situation Rule is a platform to help ensure women are protected when claiming their right to vote. Tangible practices and initiatives such as this one can reduce the gap between policy and practice. My office is actively engaged with women's groups, governments, and within the United Nations system to enhance women's participation in peace processes and governance structures, both policy-wise and operationally. We do this through monitoring implementation of core human rights agreements and standards on women, provision of technical advice on legislation and policy, and advocacy for the inclusion of women at the earliest stages of negotiation and decision-making in post-conflict societies. My office is also actively involved in developing early warning mechanisms which aim to empower women and women's groups in conflict-prone areas and to support strategies for preventing conflict. In our work to influence official peace processes, we also undertake systematic consultation with women's rights groups to ensure that their priorities and concerns are reflected in these processes. Let me share with you some examples of my office's recent engagement in these areas. In Afghanistan, the human rights component of UNRWA has focused on strengthening consultations with national women's groups, including systematic sharing and exchange of good practices with international NGOs. The human rights component of the peace mission there has consistently advocated for the inclusion of women at all levels, including in the High Peace Council and during the Bonn donor conference. Unfortunately, women serving in the High Peace Council have reported that their role has been largely symbolic, with little impact on substantive issues. This underlines the need to ensure that women's involvement in peace processes goes beyond rhetoric. From Uganda to Kosovo, OHCHR is promoting women's roles in politics, supporting their participation in local peace committees, and assisting in the development of national action plans to implement Resolution 1325. In Uganda, OHCHR is supporting the Youth Strengthening System, which aims to empower vulnerable and marginalized youth of the Akoli sub-region to participate in the peace-building process of northern Uganda. Not only is the program ensuring peace building in the short term, but it is also educating and sensitizing young men and women about women's rights to equal participation and the benefits that arise out of such equal treatment. OHCHR in Guinea has also recruited an international expert to assist the co-chairs of the Provisional National Reconciliation Commission and to ensure the participation of women in the reconciliation process. In the Central African Republic, OHCHR and UNDP are jointly seeking to enhance participation of rural women in local governance through human rights and technical training with the view to integrating them in the governance structure and decision-making processes. So far, 113 rural women have benefited from these capacity-building initiatives. On another occasion, OHCHR supported the organization of a 3-day workshop on women's contribution to conflict resolution and the consolidation of peace, where 65 women leaders and activists participated. Importantly, this training provided a forum for harmonizing the views of women in the conflict area of northeastern Central African Republic. These initiatives need to form part of a sustained effort in addressing obstacles to women's participation. We are aiming for a world where women's equal participation in all aspects of public and political life is ingrained in our minds as what should be normal rather than an exceptional achievement. We will get there by continuing to promote good practices as the discussion today will do. We also must undertake serious efforts to counter negative stereotypes which limit opportunities for women to effectively realize their right to participation. We must also continue to insist on state obligations to ensure women's right to participate in public and political life. This would require states to recruit, financially assist, and train women candidates, amend electoral procedures, develop campaigns directed at equal participation, set numerical goals and quotas, and target women for appointment to decision-making positions, including those traditionally dominated by male counterparts. Efforts must also be directed to overcome women's illiteracy and poverty if women are to be empowered to take their rightful place in political processes. Women's participation will continue to be a key priority in the work of my office, and I hope that together with the efforts of the many stakeholders present here today, our efforts will see improved numbers of women participating in local, national, and international political processes. Besides our duty to promote and protect women's participation as a human right, I am convinced that taking into account the perspective of women, over 50% of the population, will have a decidedly positive impact on the enjoyment of human rights more generally. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the High Commissioner for...
Monsieur le Président, Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs, je veux tout d'abord remercier Femmes Africa Solidarité pour la bonne coopération dans les arrangements pour cette réunion. Nous en parlons de la coopération étroite avec la société civile nationale et internationale est toujours une part très importante et intégrale dans tout le travail que nous faisons en ce qui concerne les droits humains, le développement ainsi que la gestion des crises. Je vais continuer en anglais. Mr. Chairman, Finland wants to ensure the fulfillment of the empowerment of women and considers international mechanisms such as the Human Rights Council important in this respect. Women's equal participation is needed for achieving common goals and sustainable development and for the full enjoyment of their human rights. Society can progress in a more positive and democratic direction when the competence, knowledge, experience and values of both women and men are allowed to influence and enrich political and economical decision-making processes. Increasing the number of women in government structures, particularly in the security and justice sectors, is of key importance. Women also have a central role in contributing to civilian crisis management and peacekeeping missions. Women's involvement in peacekeeping and crisis management serves to remind conflict-ridden countries that women have an essential and integral part to play in rebuilding society. By including women in the process of decision-making and social reconstruction, countries are effectively using their full potential in building up a functioning and balanced society. The Convention of Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, and the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 are important tools in enhancing gender mainstreaming and participation of women on the ground. The CEDAW Convention, that has been ratified by 187 countries, provides a significant normative basis for the protection of women's rights. Finland is strongly committed to the implementation of the Convention and supporting the CEDAW Committee's work. Finland believes that in addition to the country-specific recommendations, it is also essential to implement the CEDAW Committee's general recommendations. One important general recommendation, which has a close linkage to Resolution 1325 and is currently under preparation, is a general recommendation on the protection of women's human rights in conflict and post-conflict contexts. The recommendation was discussed in detail by CEDAW committee members last January in a seminar in Helsinki. The primary purpose of this general recommendation is to provide guidance to state parties on the legislative, policy, and other appropriate measures to ensure full compliance with convention obligations in these special contexts. Promoting women's rights through the agenda of women, peace and security is among Finland's foreign policy priorities. We have been active in implementing the Resolution 1325, especially through our own National Action Plan. The first National Action 1325 plan was issued in 2008. It was drafted in a cross-sectoral cooperation with representatives from various ministries, non-governmental organizations, and research institutes. The realization of the action plan and the implementation of its objectives have been monitored by a follow-up group formed by representatives of ministries, research institutes, and non-governmental organizations chaired by the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. Based on our experiences so far, and in order to intensify the implementation of the resolution, Finland has prepared an updated, results-oriented second action plan for the years 2012 to 2016, and this was published last week, and I'm sure it will be made available to anyone who is interested. As was the case with the first National Action Plan, also this new plan has been developed in cooperation with the aforementioned various stakeholders who will also monitor its implementation. Civil society contribution in this process has been and continues to be indispensable. International partnerships have become pivotal flagships of the Finnish 1325 work. In 2009, Finland has initiated the so-called Twinning Partnership cooperation with Kenya and Afghanistan. Through Femmes Africa Solidarité, Finland has supported the drafting and implementation of a regional 1325 action plan for Rwanda, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. In Kosovo, Finland supports a joint UN program on domestic violence. The program is designed to contribute to the implementation of Resolution 1325. Finland is also partnering with the NGO Working Group on Women, Peace and Security to help implementation of the resolution in the country-specific work of the Security Council. We are organizing a series of meetings with women's rights advocates for the members of the Security Council ahead of important mandate renewals or country-specific discussions. This provides the Council members with a possibility to hear directly the key concerns and recommendations of women working in conflict-affected countries and to take their views better into account in the Council's decision-making. Cooperation on 1325 issues with our partner countries is a process of mutual learning, as we have a lot to learn from one another. The Resolution 1325 provides a great framework not only to discuss issues related to women, peace and security, but also to gender equality and women's rights more broadly. It brings together different sectors of society that normally do not work together and stimulates useful dialogue. Mr. Chairman, women's contribution is invaluable, not only in their own societies, but also for the international agenda as a whole. Gender equality is a human rights issue. Strengthening the rights and status of women also promotes economic development and well-being. Femmes Africa Solidarité is a good example of successful gender work, and we are pleased with the cooperation we have had with you as well as with Senegal for many years now. And I am grateful for the opportunity to be here today and look forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Je remercie le ministre et je donne maintenant la parole à mon collègue, l'ambassadeur du Sénégal. C'est guère important de vous introduire. Tout le monde vous connaît en tant que commissaire.
N'eût été des contraintes de calendrier, son nombre le nouveau ministre des Affaires étrangères, même si elle venait de partir. Je l'ai connu de l'envoyer copie de ma présentation. Christian, merci d'avoir accepté d'être modérateur de ce problème. Comment ne pas saluer devant vous la présence de ma compatriote Mme Bineta Diop, présidente de notre Femmes Africa Solidarité, à qui nous devons, le ministre de Finlande vient de rappeler, le présent panel. La Finlande a proposé au Sénégal, je sais que c'est l'initiative à démarche de face, que le présent panel puisse se dérouler au premier jour de la 20e session ordinaire du Conseil des droits de l'homme. Merci donc, Mme Bineta. Bienvenue. Pour des contraintes de temps, je vais limiter ma communication à l'expérience sénégalaise en matière de promotion et de restauration de la dignité de la femme. Je le dis parce qu'en discutant souvent avec nos amis, avec nos épouses, avec nos sœurs, et même avec nos mamans, on se pose la question de savoir par quel subterfuge, par quel supercherie, dirait certains, l'homme en est venu à reléguer la femme dans le statut qui est le sien aujourd'hui dans la communauté internationale, dans les sociétés. Car depuis la nuit des temps, à travers les âges, que je sache, Adam et Ève vivaient presque à égalité au paradis. Je crois. Nous interrogeons toujours l'histoire des religions. La plupart des prophètes considèrent la femme sur le plus haut des piédestals. Dans les communautés africaines et donc sénégalaises, il y a toujours eu des sociétés matriarcales. Même dans les sociétés patriarcales, il y a cette place égalitaire accordée à la femme. Comment se fait-il aujourd'hui que la communauté internationale, sur tous les continents, à travers toutes les organisations internationales, parle de promotion, du respect des droits de la femme, parle de cessation de la violence faite contre les femmes? Je n'ai pas naturellement de réponse à ces questions. nous les laissons aux sociologues, aux anthropologues. Tout cela pour vous dire pourquoi le Sénégal aujourd'hui, dans 2 semaines, le 1er juillet plus exactement, va organiser des élections législatives pour la première fois sur des listes à 50% parité totale. C'est le fruit d'un long, d'un très long processus. Et je le dis d'emblée, les acquis en faveur de la femme sénégalaise n'ont pas été octroyés. Ils ont été conquis de haute lutte sur une longue période, menée par la femme sénégalaise elle-même d'abord, soutenue ensuite par les autres. En effet, ce sont les femmes qui ont été elles-mêmes au devant de la scène à réclamer le droit de vote au Sénégal déjà depuis 1945. Le Sénégal n'était pas encore indépendant. Elles ont été soutenues en cela par des hommes. L'un des plus d'entre eux était un certain avocat, Maître Lamine, qui, avec d'autres Sénégalais et Sénégalaises, ont engagé la lutte pour défendre leurs sœurs dans la quête de leurs droits civils et politiques. Il a fallu attendre les élections municipales de 1945 pour mesurer le poids électoral des femmes et mieux apprécier le rôle déterminant qu'elle y avait joué pour assurer une victoire en la ville. Une nouvelle ère venait de s'ouvrir aux femmes sénégalaises, désormais reconnues en raison de leur mobilisation comme force politique incontournable avec laquelle il fallait tenter. Cette dynamique s'est poursuivie avec, entre autres faits saillants, en 1963, la première femme députée venait d'être élue au Sénégal. Elle s'appelait Caroline Faye. De 1977 à 1981, le Sénégal, à travers son 5e plan de développement, a intégré en bonne place la condition des femmes. En 1978, pour la première fois, une femme faisait son entrée au gouvernement au Sénégal. C'était la même députée qui était devenue ministre, secrétaire d'État à la condition féminine. En 1984, le Sénégal organisait la première quinzaine nationale de la femme sénégalaise, manifestation annuelle à travers laquelle le statut, la condition, le rôle, l'apport de la femme au développement du Sénégal était analysé sous toutes ses coutures. En l'an 2000, on a enregistré la première participation d'une femme à l'élection présidentielle, même si elle n'a pas emporté, au Sénégal. Et en 2001, il y a eu, pour la première fois, je pense en Afrique, la nomination d'une femme au poste de Premier ministre. Ces quelques exemples, mesdames et messieurs, traduisent la place et le rôle que la femme a toujours joué au Sénégal. Et nous pensons que ce rôle, cette place, devrait être accrue, renforcée un peu partout à travers l'Afrique et le monde. C'est la raison pour laquelle le Sénégal était, sinon l'initiateur, mais l'un des principaux initiateurs de la parité au niveau de la Commission de l'Union africaine. La volonté donc affichée par les gouvernements successifs du Sénégal, ainsi que la détermination des femmes à jouer un rôle à part entière dans l'espace public sénégalais, en particulier dans la vie politique, ont permis ces avancées. Mais beaucoup reste à faire. Quelques années avant l'amorce de la loi sur la parité, des efforts considérables avaient été entrepris en direction du recrutement des femmes sénégalaises dans la fonction publique, avec une approche genre devenue désormais largement étendue dans l'administration sénégalaise. Conséquemment, les corps de l'administration dont l'accès était jusque-là réservé exclusivement aux hommes sont ouverts aux femmes. Il s'agit principalement des services de l'armée et des douanes. Aujourd'hui, c'est tous les corps militaires et paramilitaires qui accueillent des femmes, avec des résultats remarquables. Sur le terrain politique, des efforts supplémentaires ont été constatés et les statistiques sont encourageantes. Aujourd'hui, les femmes représentant 52% de la population sénégalaise ont 23% à l'Assemblée nationale, 10% au gouvernement, 13% dans les conseils régionaux, 20% dans les conseils municipaux, 27% dans les collectivités locales. C'est la raison pour laquelle le Sénégal compte beaucoup sur la loi sur la parité pour essayer d'inverser la tendance. On sait que c'est une entreprise de longue haleine, mais l'espoir est petit. Cette loi donc 2010 du 28 mai 2010 institue la parité absolue homme-femme, tire sa substance de la Constitution du Sénégal lui-même, dont l'article 5 alinéa 5 dispose: la loi favorise l'égal accès des femmes et des hommes aux fonctions et mandats. La mise en œuvre de cette loi interviendra donc, comme vous venez de le dire, pour la première fois dans le cadre des élections législatives du 1er juillet 2012. Dans sa partie opérationnelle, elle fait obligation aux 24 partis politiques en liste en ce moment, sous peine d'irrecevabilité, de présenter des listes de candidats alternativement constituées de personnes de deux sexes, un homme, une femme, ou bien une femme, un homme, ainsi de suite, jusqu'à compléter la liste. Mais que valent les lois, que valent les règlements s'ils ne sont pas appliqués? En novembre de l'année dernière, le Sénégal a créé, a mis sur les fonds baptismaux, l'Observatoire national sur la parité. C'est un organisme mixte, homme-femme, mais après revenance femme, comme aujourd'hui notre assemblée. Je me suis amusé à compter combien d'hommes il y a dans la salle. Nous sommes à peine une vingtaine, toutes les autres sont des femmes, mais je considère ça comme un progrès quand même, les hommes sont recrutés. Et cet observatoire national de la parité, qui a été créé par un décret présidentiel, a pour rôle de veiller au quotidien à ce que toutes les prescriptions, toutes les mesures concernant la promotion et la restauration des droits des femmes soient traduites dans les faits. On n'y est pas encore, mais les institutions récalcitrantes pourraient encourir des peines. En venant à cette rencontre, je me suis amusé à regarder l'article qui est consacré à une certaine Sheryl Sandberg. On dit que l'employé la mieux qui est de Facebook. Pourquoi Sheryl Sandberg? J'ai écouté une de ses interviews où elle disait le choix de carrière le plus important pour une femme, c'est le choix de son mari. Parce que vous savez, vous connaissez combien les circonstances dans lesquelles le patron de Facebook l'a recruté. Et aujourd'hui, elle est l'une des femmes les plus riches au monde, avec 30 millions de dollars annuellement. J'ai à côté de moi ma compatriote Bineta Diop, qui figure parmi l'une des femmes les plus influentes au monde. On peut en citer au Brésil, on peut en citer en Inde, un peu partout. Mon message à ce panel, c'est comment faire pour que ces succès individuels des femmes puissent être transformés en un succès collectif pour la restauration, la promotion, la protection des droits des femmes à travers le monde. Parce que la plus grande violence faite aux femmes, selon moi, c'est le simple fait de ne pas, le simple de leur avoir permis d'exercer leur talent. Et dans son rapport 2012, le rôle développement régional, qui est consacré au gender equality, il y a toute une série de conclusions qui montrent que si la femme est mise en situation, si la femme a la possibilité d'exercer ses droits, ses talents, la communauté internationale, le monde s'en je vous remercie.
Au-delà, surtout aux hommes. Merci.
Thank you, Excellence. Think it's working?
Encore.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't know which experience I have, but I'm very glad to be here. It's a pleasure for me and honor to speak in front of you and the distinguished panel. And first of all, let me express my gratitude to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland, which is our key partner, as been highlighted in the speech of Your Excellency. I'm very grateful to be associated in your work and our work in Africa on 1325. We are very happy to be working hand in hand with the permanent mission here, but also with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we hope that this partnership will continue. And also to the permanent mission of Senegal. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for joining and being part of this event, which is important. I want to recognize the Office of the High Commissioner, but our distinguished chair of this panel, I had the privilege to be invited to the only meeting the Security Council have had in talking about women, peace and security. It was in Austria during the Security Council retreat, where I was invited by Elizabeth Wren to come and have a close discussion with the Security Council. So this really brings the issue of 1325 as one of the key elements. And we see that our member states are taking Security Council more and more seriously. I think we, civil society, what we need to recognize that being in closed session in Security Council or being here at the Human Rights Council and having the high-level eminent personality, Ambassador, Minister of Foreign Affairs around the table to discuss the three pillars of 1325, which are participation, protection, and prevention. And I think we, civil society, we must be saying to ourselves that there is an important move on the implementation of the landmark resolution. So I have been asked to share with you some of the examples, and I'm very glad to talk about today my country, Senegal, because we are focusing on one main pillar of 1325, which is prevention. And I think many of us have been saying that here in Geneva, within the Human Rights Council, we need to look into how do we use 1325 for the one pillar, which is prevention. Even though we are saying the prevention side is very much linked with the protection and the participation. But how do we put forward the prevention side that and bring it at the grassroots level to make a difference and make an impact? So the case study of Senegal, and even though my ambassador have really highlighted some of the aspects of the work that have been done in Senegal have already been shared, but I would like to give my input on that. As you know, in Africa right now, election is part of our problem, not part of the solution. It should be part of the solution, but it is not. Because election bring conflict, and election tend to be more and more, not just the conflict, but violent conflict. Because it is the occasion of sharing of the power, and it's an occasion for parties that to divide on ethnic lines sometimes, or divided into other lines, and to bring the society in the middle. And Senegal, everybody on the TV was saying that Senegal was maybe going to fall apart, like in the West Africa region we have seen Cote d'Ivoire and other countries. So we were just about getting into a violent conflict in Senegal during our last election. So, and of course, this is the example that I'm sharing, is what it is really 1325 in action. Because what we say that we have a paper which is well designed, it is a good landmark that we are using, but how do you actually use it to make it effective, to make sure that it works in a way in one of the pillars. So what we did, we say use 1325 to build a common agenda for peaceful election. So we organized, and FAS was the facilitator, Femmes Africa Solidarité, with the support of many others, but we started by saying, let's build a common agenda for peaceful election with more than 60 NGOs that are in Senegal working either on human rights, on development issues, on health issues, so on and so forth. We all rally together to say that we're going to put pressure on the political leaders to say that we need peace for the election, peaceful election in Senegal. So that was the first thing we did. The second thing was to recognize the leaders of our communities, to form a contact group. As you know, when UN is sending a mediation group, they have a group of contact, sometimes led by Kofi Annan, just to give you an example, or some high level. But in our society, we have also mediators. Mediators, and I think my ambassador said women can be good mediators. And I think that 1325 have recognized that. So in our group, we recognize those that are well recognized in our communities, the women that have the credibility in the society that can lead the movement. So there were the elders, for example, and you know that they are a group called leaders like President Mandela and others. So in Senegal, we recognize a good group of contact of women leaders who could lead the process of mediation. So we were mediating. We mediate among the political parties on the ground. We mediate with the religious leaders to tell them, what do you think in this coming election? Why is it so much violence? There was some people that have been already killed in the process. So we mediate between the women of political parties as well. And we make them even sign a social contract that they're not going to attack each other, but rather working toward peace for the election. The second thing we did was the mobilization, because you cannot come and it's a process of building an agenda, but also a process of building a network, but mobilizing the women, cross-ethnic, cross-political parties, and we were able to call this group the Women in White group. It was a huge mobilization in one of the biggest stadiums in 1,000. Women that were just waiting to say, I might be belonging to a political party, but what I can is to bring myself, my experience for the peace of Senegal, and we don't get into war. So that itself reduced the violence, the verbal violence that was going into the media. Once we start talking ourselves and building alliances with the media, we realized that the tension was reducing among the political parties. We were calling them to say, whatever happened, go to election, but we want you to reduce the violence. And we, the women, we are in the median, we are in the between. We will vote for one of you, but what we want is that votation, that process, go peacefully. That was one of our strategy as well. So we want also to reach the rural women, because the rural was saying that what is the agenda? Because we are just saying you vote for one and for the other, but what is the political agenda? What is the human security agenda on the table? There was nobody was talking on what you're going to do for education, what kind of agriculture sector you are going to build, but everybody was saying you vote for me or you vote for the other. So we brought back the issues by visiting the rural women and saying, after the election, what do you want the things you see happening for the winner of this election? And we had continued to build the agenda. We were on a peace caravan, all of us in white, to go to say we want peaceful election, putting constantly pressure on the various actors. We also say that it was important we have the youth with us, because the youth was on strike at the university in particular, and they were also demonstrating in the street. So we say that we women of Senegal, we want also to have a direct dialogue with our young boys and girls. And one of their agenda was the reopening of the university. And I can tell you, even after the election, we took that agenda forward because we went to meet the different actors to tell them that to mediate between the university and the student. And I can tell you, thanks to the continuation, they are back at the university. The other thing we did was to build a group of women as observers. You know, when elections are there, the only thing that you need to prevent was the process of observation, before, during, and after. So whatever result is out of the pool can be accepted by the two. So women tend to be credible because Senegal was the first time that women were formed as a group, as a team to go to observe. They were in uniform, we were with them, and we trained them in one of the curriculum which is developed by international IDEA, which make sure that women are better equipped. And the same thing with men, but they are equipped, the same tool, to be able to observe the polling station and see if there is fraud, if there is misunderstanding, and etc. So we deploy our troops, as we call them, in all over Senegal. In all the region of Senegal, we deploy our observers. But also we train monitors, because we saw that media were also part of the problems, because the media was fueling the conflict that was starting into the debate. So we trained we call them the monitors, and also send them out there to be able to come back to us and tell us what is happening in the field. If there is any violence that they see, and they can report inside in the debate within the media. So lastly, we put in place a women's situation room, because the whole process is a platform, but the situation room is really is a physical, with high technology like mobile phones, because all the troops that we sent out there were equipped with mobile phone, and we had an online, so people can report to us, can tell us, those who are in the situation room, what is happening when they see a case to report. Anybody seeing violence can send us a message and say, this is happening in this and such place. And what the situation room does is to be in constant contact with the Electoral Commission and tell them this is happening, go right now, or to the police. We had all the numbers in the situation room to monitor. And of course, the situation room was really well equipped. We had statisticians, we have politicians, we have so many actors. The UN Commissioner for Human Rights sent a delegation who was helping us to interpret the law, UNDP. All the UN agencies were there to help us to be at the upfront and better equipped to respond to the kind of violence that we were seeing up the front. So for me, one of the indicators of success, if we can call it, and of course we have a lot of challenges, but the indicators of success was, for example, all political parties came to the meeting rooms and they said, we recognize you, and you are the one who have put so much pressure that now we are talking about peace in our own circle. And I think the president-elect, the first visit, the president who was elected, President Macky Sall, his first visit was to the situation room. And as you remember, it was the previous president, President Wade, who have proposed the gender parity, the principle that our ambassador have been talking about, which is 50-50 in the parliament. And when the new president visited the situation room, we told him we want the 50-50 to remain. And they said that they will keep it in the law will be still in this election. That's why I think that Senegal, after Rwanda, will be one of the countries that will have the majority of women in parliament. That is going to happen very soon because we are implementing 1325. But even if we don't call it 1325 in Senegal, and we call it We Women 1325 in action, I think that is what is making the difference. This is one of the indicators. So now, I think we in the room, many of us are in the NGO Committee on the Status of Women, which is part of the Congo. This is the civil society group. We really would like to see with the international community that we link 1325 to the human rights instrument. In terms of the indicators, but also in terms of the mandate, we want to see when you are sending mission, 1325 being upfront. We would like also to see that when UPR is reporting, that we see 1325 evaluated with the indicators that have been developed, because this is one UN at the end of the day. Because we think that what is happening in each country should be, and in the system itself, will be also looked at by the other mechanism. So we are very happy and very glad that Finland is in the second report of 1325. I think you are showing the way and paving the way. That 1325 is going to continue to be part of the agenda. And I think that in the other recommendation is also that Senegal, for example, to adopt a national action plan. Mr. Ambassador, we know that there is a draft, but we want our government to have a national action plan. And I will stop here, and we are, as civil society women's group, ready to be part on this process, and we will contribute to your debate, and our work in the field will be brought at the table. I thank you very much.
On the floor, and just in doing so, request you to briefly present yourselves when asking a question. We have a little time left, so here is your moment for questions to the panelists, please. You can impact and input more comprehensively into New York, and give your coordinating role in New York. I think that we know the ears are already here. I have several nameplates. France next, then one I can't read, and then the UK. France, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. Tout d'abord, je voudrais vous présenter les excuses de mon représentant permanent qui a assisté au début de cette réunion, mais malheureusement n'a pas pu rester pour prendre la parole. Donc c'est en son nom que je vous adresse nos remerciements. Tout d'abord à Son Excellence le Ministre des Affaires étrangères de Finlande, aux ambassadeurs de l'Autriche et du Sénégal, et bien sûr à Mme Bineta Diop. Nous travaillons de près avec notre organisation Femmes Africa Solidarité depuis un certain temps. C'est dans notre intention de maintenir un partenariat de base avec vous. J'ai juste quelques commentaires en fait, sur la discussion aujourd'hui. Tout d'abord pour dire à quel point ma délégation estime que l'exemple, l'étude de cas qui a été fournie aujourd'hui est intéressante. Premièrement parce qu'elle permet de mettre l'accent vraiment sur la mise en œuvre de la résolution 1325. Il est vrai quand on assiste à des réunions à Genève sur les droits des femmes, on parle souvent des instruments dont nous disposons. On est tous d'accord pour dire qu'ils sont bons et utiles. On regrette souvent que la mise en œuvre laisse à désirer. Donc là justement c'est un bon exemple de mise en œuvre. C'est quelque chose qui nous, je pense, nous tient particulièrement à cœur. C'est pour ça qu'on a développé un plan national d'action qui était prêt déjà en octobre 2010. Mais également parce que c'est un projet, donc cette cellule de veille électorale qui aussi met l'accent sur un aspect de la résolution qui est parfois un peu, disons peut-être un peu négligé par rapport à l'aspect résolution de conflit, donc qui est celui de la participation des femmes à la vie. Alors même qu'il nous semble que c'est un thème qui a revêtu récemment une actualité assez flagrante. Donc on a beaucoup parlé par exemple du rôle des femmes dans le printemps arabe, c'est le sujet que d'ailleurs que le ministère des Affaires étrangères français avait choisi le ministère avait choisi de discuter à l'occasion de la Journée internationale des femmes en mars dernier, mais également parce qu'il y a eu énormément d'élections à travers le monde récemment, et donc on a parlé du Sénégal, mais contre, au niveau de l'Assemblée nationale qui a été élue hier, on a 155 femmes, contre 107 il y a 5 ans, donc c'est un progrès. Par contre, si je vous dis que le Parlement est composé de 577 sièges, un rapide calcul vous permet de voir que ce n'est pas tout à fait paritaire, c'est 27% en fait, du total. Donc il y a encore des progrès à faire, mais je pense qu'on est quand même sur la bonne voie. Donc si je peux juste me permettre de poser une question à Mme Bineta Diop, j'ai écouté avec attention la présentation du projet de cellule de veille électorale. Je sais que Femmes Africa Solidarité est active dans plusieurs pays en Afrique. Donc est-ce que par exemple c'est un projet que vous pourriez envisager de reproduire dans d'autres contextes électoraux, dans d'autres pays? Est-ce que les pays dans lesquels vous intervenez ont suscité fait preuve d'un certain intérêt en particulier?
Merci la France. Maintenant, est-ce que je vois bien, c'est l'Algérie? S'il vous plaît, vous avez la parole.
Sur cette lancée, on sait très bien comment vous nous organisez, en tout cas l'interaction que nous avons avec le Canada sur les questions des droits de l'homme, surtout et les droits de la femme durant les sessions. Et nous vous remercions donc de nous donner donc cette opportunité. Nous avons également la Norvège, parce que je ne les ai pas mentionnés, mais le Situation Room était aussi financé par une partie par le PNUD et également la Norvège. Et nous avons tous nos processus des Grands Lacs avec la Finlande et comme disait tout à l'heure, la France, avec qui nous sommes en partenariat également dans des pays comme la Côte d'Ivoire. Je viens de la Côte d'Ivoire, nous venons de faire un séminaire. Et je le lis avec ce qui a été dit par le UK sur les questions de gender-based violence. Donc il y a les femmes, en tout cas les ONG de la Côte d'Ivoire, ont fait donc un travail remarquable de documenter les cas pour amener ça au niveau du tribunal pénal international sur les cas des violences faites aux femmes durant les élections avec les femmes, en fait, les viols qui a été commis. Et je pense qu'elles ont aussi besoin d'être écoutées, de faire une alliance réelle pour pouvoir aussi avoir l'impact et le présenter par exemple à la Haye. J'ai reçu un courrier des femmes pendant que j'étais là-bas, qu'elles se sont présentées à la Haye, mais qu'elles n'ont pas pu avoir encore l'impact qu'elles voudraient. Donc c'est des cas spécifiques. Il y a la généralité d'avoir les policiers, les politiques, mais également faudrait-il voir jusqu'où il faut faire pour que les cas pratiques des cas qui existent, c'est vrai qu'on travaille dans la prévention, mais quand il y a également dans des cas précis comme là où ça s'est réellement passé, il y a eu le cas par exemple de la Guinée. Moi j'étais dans la Guinée quand, avant leurs élections, il y a eu des cas de viol. Est-ce que ça a été résolu? Comment ça a été pris en compte? Je sais que la Haut Commissaire a été également faire un rapport et que ça a beaucoup décanté la situation. Mais comment répondre à tous ces cas, je pense que c'est quelque chose sur lequel nous devons réfléchir. Et je félicite le Portugal pour notre Aria Formula, nous en avons besoin beaucoup plus. On en faisait une par année, mais maintenant que ça continue. Pour l'Algérie, j'encourage l'Union africaine. Nous sommes en train de travailler avec le Conseil de paix et sécurité pour avoir un Regional Action Plan, donc un plan continental de 13-25. Je pense que tant que nous n'aurons pas, et je sais que le président Atissari et d'autres sont en train donc d'avoir ce dialogue pour que nous ayons une 13-25 comme l'Union européenne au niveau de l'Afrique. Pour le moment, nous ne l'avons pas. Le processus a commencé, mais je pense que l'Algérie joue un rôle important, le Sénégal joue un rôle important. Vous pouvez nous aider à aller vers une résolution 1325. Voyant qu'il y a à New York les amis de 1325, je pense qu'il faudrait réfléchir dans le sens, monsieur le ministre des Affaires étrangères, de nous aider aussi à avoir cette vision ici au niveau de Genève, pour qu'on puisse avoir certains amis où nous référer pour faire en sorte que 1325 soit vraiment prise en compte dans les débats et dans tous les mandats qui va y avoir lieu. Donc c'est une recommandation forte que je suis en train de faire par rapport ici. En tout cas, nous, la société civile, on continue de s'organiser et nous serons avec vous dans cette vision. Merci.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Vous, en tant que modérateur, quel outcome donner à ce panel? Je sais qu'en mars dernier, le 8 mars, nous avions fait, le Conseil des droits de l'homme avait fait une déclaration conjointe. Elle était très générale. Peut-être qu'on peut aller un peu plus au fond des choses, voir comment être un peu plus spécifique. New York, Genève, 1325, et toutes ces nombreuses organisations internationales du sein des Nations Unies du Nord et de la société civile pour faire une réalisation synergique des droits des femmes en tant que le terrain dans le monde. Merci.
Well, thank you. The discussion is to bring this forward to next week's whole-day discussion on women's human rights and try to create a focus there precisely with regard to bringing Geneva and New York closer together, and also to focus on the concrete input and impact which Geneva can have. And let me add the second thought to that, which is that we have been discussing a lot about participation and about prevention. The Minister was concentrating on participation, Mme Diop on prevention. I think we should not overlook protection, of course, we don't do that, but certainly protection is one of the sort of core functions of the work of the Human Rights Council and around the Human Rights Council and the mechanisms the Human Rights Council has, and maybe that is also a way to create a focus on issues of not only specialized mechanisms such as the new working group on non-discrimination of women, but more generally of the mechanisms and how they can bring that focus back onto the floor of the Council. But sorry for keeping you from taking the floor.
Obviously, we hope to be able to follow the work of Portugal at the Security Council in the coming next 2 years. And indeed, this was one of the items that I had the opportunity to discuss with the High Commissioner this morning about how to integrate 1325 and women's issues more closely to all the activities of the Security Council. Of course, in the best case, we could use the Human Rights Council to prevent issues to come into the Security Council, because once they are at the Security Council, they already tend to be rather intractable. So it is important not only to look at New York, but in Geneva and elsewhere. I welcome very much the UK initiative. This is the kind of thing that we all need to work on. I thought I might say a few words on quotas, since they were mentioned in some of the interventions. I have to say that I am somewhat neutral on the issue. In fact, we do have quotas in Finland, not for any direct elections, not to parliament or local councils, but in spite of that, perhaps because of that, we actually, I always say that we have the highest proportion of women in our parliament in any free elections. Namely that we have 84 out of 200 are women, because we have no lists, we have no requirements. But this is the result given by the electorate, who want to see almost half women. And in our government today, out of 19, we have 9 women. We have had actually a majority of women in the government also. And I don't think there's any position of importance that women have not occupied at one time or another in our country. But a lot remains to be done still, obviously. And particularly in working life, we still experience a protest because women on the average earn about 80% of what men do. There's no formal discrimination. If you are doing exactly the same work, you receive exactly the same salary. that is taken care of. But the structures of the labour market work in a way which is still discriminatory towards women, and we have to address that as well. But when we do have quotas, we have quotas for committees and other institutions appointed by governments or local councils. We have a gender neutral quota, meaning that 40% have to be both men and women. This in the future is something which will also protect us men. And then on 1325 and one item which is closely related to that and also very much the focus of Finnish attention is peace mediation. As you know, we together with Turkey have been promoting peace mediation in the UN and have formed the Friends of Mediation group. And here too, we recognize the absolutely vital role involving women also as mediation and in all mediation effects. And it's important in conflict situations that we do not only see women as victims, they often are, but that misses the point that women are also a vital part of any solution, and that they have to be engaged and brought to the table so as to achieve lasting and viable, sustainable solutions. And this not only, by the way, involves the women of the countries or regions concerned where we are. It also has to apply to the international community's efforts in bringing experts, mediators, peacekeepers, civilian crisis management capabilities to any crisis. It is absolutely important to involve women on a full equal basis. That's what we try to do in Finland. For example, 40% of the people we have in civilian crisis management missions are women, including leading positions. So this also sets an important role model in many places where international efforts are needed. But I stress that at the end of the day, we need to work together and we need to learn from each other's experience and progress. No amount of work we do in Helsinki can solve the problems and can find the right solutions unless we have this kind of cooperation and continuous dialogue and interaction with other governments, but also particularly with civil society organizations. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.